Good morning, good morning. I hope you had a good breakfast. I look at some of my colleagues having breakfast this morning, and their plate was real colorful, all the greens and reds and all this stuff. They had enough beans and vegetables, etc. What they didn't realize, and what anyone who had that breakfast didn't realize, is that you also had 5 milligrams of pesticide. As beautiful as the plate looked, and as delicious as the food might have tasted, you had 5 milligrams of pesticide on your plate this morning. But don't worry, it won't kill you instantly. That pesticide requires somewhere in the order of somewhere between 100 and 1,500 milligrams per kilogram of body weight to cause death. However, that does not mean you are free, because if any of you heard the discussion from Michael Andrew yesterday, there's a process called bioaccumulation, where that pesticide can build up in your body and end up in more difficulties for you. Did you know that 25 million agriculture workers worldwide suffer from pesticide poisoning annually? And 300,000 of them die. Did you know that approximately 5.6 billion pounds of pesticides are produced annually? In 1988, as a graduate student, I was doing some work. I discovered that in the Windward Islands, which have an area of less than 800 square miles and a population of less than 500,000, 4 million pounds of pesticides were used on those islands. But remember this, in that 800 square miles of islands for the Windward Islands, you have to take out the roads, the rivers, the schools, the hospitals, the playing field, the mountains. When you were finished, you had less than 300 square miles of land that really being put under agriculture. And in that area, you're using 4 million pounds of pesticide. Could you imagine what that's doing to us? And where did all that pesticide go? All pesticide banned in developed countries are actually manufactured in developed countries. So in 1988, I'm doing some research with a pesticide in the United States, manufactured in the United States. And I'm trying to get 5 grams of this thing to purchase. So I go to a supplier and he says, sir, do you want to go to prison, or you're trying to get me to go to prison? So what are you talking about? He said, it's illegal even to talk about that thing here. So I couldn't get it there. Couldn't get that. Do you know that genetically modified foods use more chemicals than naturally occurring ones, the plants that we're accustomed to? Well, now you can understand where you got that 5 milligrams of food of pesticide from in your breakfast this morning. But when we begin to talk about pesticides, we classify them in groups in order to understand better what they're doing. So those that are used to kill insects, we call them insecticides. And if they're used to kill mollusks, the snails, we call them molluscicides. And if they are for rodents, we call them rodenticides. So we classify them based on their target organism, what they're designed to do. Secondly, we classify them based on their chemical composition, the active ingredients. The most common active ingredients we have around us now is the phosphate groups of pesticides. And everybody, yesterday I heard a lot about touchdown and Roundup and glyphosate. They're all phosphate groups. The phosphate compound is the active group. The other elements on the sides, the other side groups, are trade names, trade secrets that they use to make them different. So somebody by touchdown and one by Roundup, you're getting the same active ingredients. What is different is the side groups, and the side groups determine how the pesticide behaves in the environment, whether it adheres to something, or whether it is soluble in water, or whether it is lighter and it can be blown about in the air. We also look at pesticide based on their mode of action. Are they stomach poisons? Are they abrasive to the skin? Are they contact poisons? Or are they inhaled? You know, are they the type that use fumigants? So that's another classification based on their actions. We can also classify them based on their formulations. Are we using powders for dusting? Or are we using sprays that we do aerial sprays with? What's the classification? It's important to understand the classification because that will help when you begin to talk about the application. You look at my good friend, the person at the top right doing an application of pesticide. Notice the way they're dressed. The person has a hat, and I guess from looking at that person, you can tell what part of the world they're from, right? The face is totally uncovered. The hands, the lower part of the hands, totally uncovered. And this person is doing this for 8 hours per day. And that's a life earning. That's a livelihood activity. And very likely, the feet of that person is also uncovered. The person at the bottom, the second one, that one has all the fancy gears, the respirators, totally covered in the suit. But she's just doing a backyard application to a tree. That's the difference between the application of pesticide in a developed country and the application of pesticide in what we call third world countries. All right? Now, you need to understand this because every organ in the human body has shown susceptibility to some kind of pesticide. Every organ in your body is susceptible to some one of those pesticides out there. Pesticides at harmful levels have been found in breast milk, and yesterday I saw somebody showing a slide of that. One lady in Vietnam was tested, and it was discovered that her breast milk had 6 times the level of chlorine. Chlorine is one of those banned pesticides that the EPA recommended. 6 times the level recommended by the EPA. So that mother was basically feeding her baby pesticide because it's in her body. Some chemical compounds bioaccumulate or they build up in the body over time. And so the 5 milligrams that you eat this morning might not do anything today. But if you keep doing that for a year, you know what might happen down the road. So let's avoid it. We need to be informed, right? We need to understand something of the toxic nature of chemicals, their toxicity, how they behave. 3 common things you should know. First of all is what we call the lethal concentration, LC50. The concentration that will kill 50% of a target organism. Why the concentration? Because we often think of the dose. There's also the lethal dose, LD50, that will kill 50% of a population. But that requires you to take in that amount at one time. The LC, the lethal concentration, depends upon the buildup in the air or in water. So you go swimming in the water and the pesticide is in there, you don't know what it is and what concentration it is. And your body can accumulate this. And know also that pesticides are absorbed into the body through the skin, especially the facial and genitalial areas. The facial areas, and that lady who was spraying with her face totally uncovered, all the pesticide drift was coming back to her, right? So your face, the facial area is a very sensitive area. The genitalia, very sensitive, absorb large quantities of pesticides to which you are exposed. So you need to know something about the lethal concentration. Also, you need to know something about the half-life. By that we mean, how long does it take for half of this pesticide to disappear from the area of application? So you're going to spray your field, and if you follow that dossier on the pesticide that you order, they will tell you, do not re-enter the field within X number of hours or days of application. Or do not eat this food X number of days after application. So you go to the market to buy some cabbage, right? Beautiful. And there's one over there, got some little spots, a few black spots. That one on the other side looks bright and beautiful. I am buying this bright and beautiful. What you didn't know is that the bright and beautiful farmer sprayed his field every week for the last 3 weeks to keep it bright and beautiful. But the guy who didn't do that because he respected the dossier that says, don't eat this thing within 21 days of application, he followed the rules. So the insects got a chance to start attacking his fruit. So we go to the market and we have to learn some market shopping, right? It's not always because it looks beautiful. Make sure that you know something about it, where it's grown. St. Lucian was what's it? I heard your song a while ago, I missed it. But you need to do your own growth and production. How does pesticide harm us? That particular pesticide you see on the screen there, the photograph is of a pesticide that we use to spray insects. And many of you, if you live in some of the homes, you know you have to use this thing on the roaches, right? But here is something. You don't have to spray the roach until it's dead because the pesticide itself does not kill the roach, you know. It's the action on the inside. What happens? It blocks biological pathways. So the insect keeps getting the message. Even after you have stopped spraying, the insect is getting this message, so it's running. For my biology students, across the synapse, there's the acetylcholine that takes messages across. After the message has gone, you must remove the acetylcholine, or the message will keep going even after the thing has happened. What this pesticide does is that it blocks the acetylcholine esterase that removes the acetylcholine. So the message never stops. The message keeps going even after it has gone. Imagine being stuck with a pin, and 2 hours later you're still feeling the pin in your hand. That's exactly what happened. That's what that pesticide does. So you need to know how these things are. They sometimes block pathways in your bodies. Think of a mother trying to feed her baby, and the pathway from the intestines where the food is being digested, going up to the breast to be stored. Something is up there pretending to be milk, blocking the part of the milk that should be going there. And you know what you will feed the baby at the end of the day. So we need to know something about them. So I have a list of dirty dozen pesticides and foods. When I told you a while ago that you ate 5 grams of pesticide, you wonder how I knew that. There's a group in the United States that actually track foods and tell you the pesticide concentration. Now, this is for the United States. And that list is in order. They're saying that each of those foods has something of the order of 5 milligrams of pesticide in them when you get them on the market shelf. Strawberries, spinach, nectarines, apples. Well, you know the apples is notorious. Very often they have to recall them from the market, right? Too much LR or some other chemical. So those are your dirty dozen foods buying out of the United States. Then we have the dirty dozen pesticide, and I only list 7 of them there. The aldrin, chlordane, DDT, dieldrin, heptachlor. These are the chlorinated pesticides. Remember a while ago I spoke to you about the active ingredients in pesticides, and I told you that the phosphate groups are the most common ones, right? Now these are the chlorinated ones. You have a chlorine compound in there, that's the active ingredients. And all of those chlorinated compounds have very long half-life. And so they are banned across the world. And it was one of those I was working with in the United States when I couldn't get a gram to buy, but yet they were manufacturing tons of it and sending it to other parts of the world. The bottom four, the methampsodium and the methyl bromide and others, are not banned in all parts of the world. But they are not frequently used. But these are also chemicals. Now note the actions. Some cause birth defects. Some are carcinogenic. They cause cancer. Some cause cardiac action and cardiac arrest, and some even lead to respiratory problems. Now, one of the things we need to understand is that when people apply pesticide, you need to know where the pesticide goes, right? In that 4 million pounds of pesticide I told you in the Windward Islands, at the peak of banana production, we use aerial spraying, right? You had these little planes coming down, whoops. And in St. Vincent, we have a place we call Mesopotamia, a little valley. So we grow lots of banana in Mesopotamia. But in Mesopotamia, we have 2 secondary schools, 3 primary schools, a hospital, a small hospital, police station, courthouse, and everything you want in the community is right there. So see, this plane comes over the hill, and now, understand this, the plane has to do a certain amount of dynamics, right? It comes down, it releases its pesticide, and it has to do that fast to get back out before it hits the other hill, right? So it comes down, whoops, and let's go to the pesticide. And what happens? It drifts across the whole valley. What's the target organism? Think about it. So, to avoid all of this pesticide, we're moving towards an organic paradigm. And there's a group in St. Vincent at the northwestern side, the Richmond Vale Academy. They've been doing a lot of work with people in the community to go organic and teaching them. So the lady in the photograph at the bottom actually grows all of the food she needs in her garden. She swears by organic. Now, she's not totally organic. She cannot be certified as organic because the soil on which she's growing the food had used pesticide at least 6-7 years ago. And if your soil was exposed to pesticide 10 years ago, you're still not ready for organics. But you're moving towards. It's a process. And in our small island where we do not have the privilege of moving from soil area to area, we have to work with what we have. So it will take a while, but we're moving in a process. So they're teaching these people organic for agriculture. And that lady has taken it on seriously. And she's now into the business big and spreading the message. Above, you recognize the boys in the yellow jumpsuit, right? From the correctional facility. They've actually gone into the correctional facility, which has a lot of lands around, and teaching organic farming to them. And the government has actually endorsed that. So we now have organic agriculture being introduced into the correctional facility to the men in there. So when they come out, hopefully, they will carry some of the practice. We have a lot of this in the home garden. Now, note something. Organic farming is holistic. When you use pesticide farming in large productions, you're concerned with your bottom line. How much money am I going to make? In organic farming, you're concerned with the economy, you're concerned with the ecology, you're concerned with the environment, not just one. Agriculture with pesticide has no interest in ecology. So what happened? We use the pesticide because we want to get rid of this pest, and the next thing you know, you kill all the ladybird. And if any of you know these little things we call ladybird, they were the things that prevented the mealybug. So a few years ago throughout the Eastern Caribbean, we had an outbreak of pink mealybug, and so you couldn't ship anything, especially things like soursop, sugar apple, all of those fruits attacked by pink mealybug. The pink mealybug is a prey for the ladybird, but you kill all the ladybird with spraying. You see, that's because pesticide production and pesticide use have large lobbying companies and have no interest in ecology. They have interest in money. Organic farming speaks to you about the ecology, the environment, everything. They also talk to you about your life. One of the greatest producers of carbon dioxide is the production of agrochemicals. So when you produce agrochemicals, remember you're contributing to climate change. When you go organic, you're shifting away from climate change. So all the big meetings in Poland, they're talking about climate change convention. We need to come to the Caribbean and do something real. Go to organic farming. You must realize that your organic fertilizers, the organic system is one of recycling, right? You're recycling the earth's resources. You're not wasting it. On the other hand, you're trying to destroy as much of it as you can. So, as an old teacher, I can't teach you without testing you, right? So here's a question for you. We cannot produce enough food to feed the world population without the use of chemicals. True or false? I had that discussion on the boulevard yesterday morning. The jury is still out on that one. There's some people who tell you can't do it and others who say you can. The lady who I showed you in Richmond Vale, she swears by it. But that's a small population. So the answer on that one is not clear-cut. Okay, so we are saying that the jury is still out on it. There's a two-sided argument. I had that on the boulevard yesterday morning. The second question, chemical applies to food crops are found only externally and can be safely washed off. True or false? False, we know that, right? The cabbage and all that stuff like that. Organically produced foods are more nutritious than foods grown with chemicals. True or false? That's false. The nutrition is the same. What is different is that you're taking in some pesticides when you eat the chemically produced ones, right? So that's not the end of it. So we continue this whole process of producing, organically producing food, feeding our people. What's your take-home message? The best response to toxic chemical is an informed response. You are being informed. Inform someone else when you leave here. Those people you see there are from the villages around the northwestern side of the island, and they're being educated by the people at the Richmond Vale Academy so that they can now take the message across, right? Chemical compounds have the potential to pollute the entire planet. And somewhere in this thing, I think one of my slides probably slipped out that I didn't see, but there's a slide on organic farming that shows they're now moving back to free-range chicken. Those of us who grew up in my age will know when we had yard fowl, and the eggs were great. Now they realize suddenly that, hey, something is missing, so we're going back to free-range chickens. Here is something. In 2002 in England, in northwestern England, there was a geriatric home with some old ladies, and the people suddenly observed that the old ladies were becoming interested in the men, the groundsmen and all the men walking around. And these are old retired ladies. Why are these ladies interested in the men? And they're becoming aggressive. So they started analyzing something is wrong. And they discovered in the food that the ladies were eating in the soups, there was a high amount of stilbestrol. Now, stilbestrol is a product that is put in the broiler feed. It's also an estrogen product, an estrogen generating structure. So when you get stilbestrol in the body, it stimulates more production of estrogen. So you can understand Granny getting a second spring, right? Estrogen hits Granny and she's back in motion. And so they had to remove that because the ladies were really becoming aggressive. That's the danger of chemical production in our system, not taking into account the whole ecology. So chemical compounds have the potential to pollute the entire planet. Organic production is best for man and the environment. It's climate friendly. That's your take-home message, friend. So here is my little Granny situation. Granny lights a mosquito coil at 5 o'clock in the afternoon to make sure that the insects don't come in, right? But at 6 o'clock, this mosquito comes in, lands on, lights on the remaining bit of pesticide. Granny said, what disrespect? The mosquito said, really, Granny?
Thank you very much. I now understand the origin of the term, spring chicken. Questions and comments, please, for Dr. Murray. You begin.
Hello, good morning, sir. I have two questions. Is there any safe pesticide that we could use, like organic pesticides? And the second question is not really about pesticides, but it's about more manure. Is some of the manure that we buy, like the fertilizer, is it just as bad as the pesticides, or is it good? Or thank you.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Okay, your first question, are all pesticides bad? I think somewhere in there I did indicate that pesticides are not all bad. I'm not going back. But anyway, the slide before, pesticides are not all bad. There are some naturally occurring pesticides that cannot even be used in organic agriculture because they're not safe. There's one that's called strychnine. It's produced from, what's the crop? I'm trying to remember the name of the plant, but it's called strychnine. It's a naturally occurring stuff, right? But you cannot use it in organic production because it stays in the plant and it can be taken and has the same negative effect as many of the others. So some organic, naturally occurring substances cannot be used in organic agriculture. Now, pesticides are not all bad. What is more important is how they are used. Now, your question you asked, if they're all dangerous. All chemicals are dangerous. All chemicals. Even the hydrogen peroxide that you use to clean the wounds, or some people even use it to gag with it, anything is poisonous. The problem is the concentration in your body. Remember we talked about lethal concentration? What quantity of it must build up in your body to cause damage? Additionally though, it has been found that malathion, the thing we use here, I don't know if you use it to chase mosquito around here, the thing you burn and cause that, what do you call it now, the fogging. They do it across the whole of the Eastern Caribbean. There's a farmer in California, on the 10th of August this year, he was awarded $298 million by the court because he proved that malathion applied to the soil, applied to the soil, caused him skin cancer. Right? That's recent. So although they tell you this thing is safe, they say if you feed rats 1% glyphosate for a year, after that year, during that year nothing happens, but after the year, they all begin to show signs of tumors and cancers. So what am I trying to say in your answer? Every pesticide is dangerous. The thing is the concentration and the exposure, right? So if you have a small amount and you don't get back into it for a long time, your body can probably handle that small amount. But that small amount over time, constant insult to the cells, just like that expression, it will eventually lead to problems, right? So we have to be aware of that. The exposure is dangerous. Over time, it will do you some harm. So the 5 milligrams of pesticide you had for breakfast this morning might not harm you. But when it builds up, a number of things can happen to pesticide in the body. One, the body can tag them for disposal. So you'll find a lot of, for example, glyphosate and Roundup in your urine. If you take it in, within 5 hours, you find a large amount of it begins to come out in the urine. The body tags it and disposes of it. It's like you see something in your house, hey, what is doing here? You put it in the trash. That's tagged for disposal, right? But it's not all of it that goes out. Small amounts remain and bioaccumulates, and sometimes it gets locked into other systems, right? And that's where the danger is. So you're going to deal with the insects in the house at night and where do you go after that? Do you go outside? You tell me how many people go outside after they have done that. One of them there was one I had to go to the company and say, please take this ad off, I'm going to do something about it. They were using it and said, safe near food. And they were all over the food. I don't know if you ever saw that one. Safe near food. No pesticide is safe near your food. Granted, your body can dispose of some of them rather quickly, but over time, they will win the war. That's why the last slide I had asked, who wins the war in pesticide? The mosquito showed that Granny didn't win the war. And the second question was fertilizers. Fertilizers are also agrochemicals. The production of fertilizers also lead to large amounts of carbon dioxide released into the atmosphere. So in that concept, it's negative. But it does not come to you in the form to cause damage because the plants actually take it in and synthesize it to produce the food. The problem with agrochemicals in food production, like fertilizers, is that they cause the plants to grow fast and they don't really get enough time to produce the kind of quality you're looking for. So for example, in St. Vincent, we grow sweet potatoes. If you take your NPK that was designed for bananas and you spread it in the potato field, the potatoes get big. In 3 months, 4 months, you harvest them. But you don't put down that potato and leave it for a week and come back. It's rot. If you cut it and leave it open on the counter and you go away, it turns black on the inside. Right? If you grow it normally, you have it in the house, it begin to sprout and grow in the house and nothing happens. So the concentration has an effect on the product, but in itself it's not toxic to say, like in the case of the pesticide.
This isn't a question more than it's an observation, and it's not that I've participated in using insecticides or fertilizers to that extent, but I've always remarked when you go to like the hardware store, you go in that plant and agricultural section, the bottle sizes are never small. They always come in very large quantities. So I always say, this is a turn-off for me, because this is not girl size or single size use or for small use, but then it also encourages what you're talking about in terms of that overexposure and that excessive use. Why, therefore, you might not have the answer, but is it that it is to cater particularly for industry, or is it that it is to cater for just overuse? I mean, and this is probably something that the psychology of the sales department and the manufacturer and the producer looks at, but why does it come in such large quantities only?
Okay, now I can't tell you why the manufacturers put in such large containers only, but I'll tell you something else. At the height of banana production in the Windward Islands, the company that that buys the bananas was also the chemical producer. They own the company that produced the chemicals, right? And what they do, they say to farmers, we will give you the inputs, which was the pesticides and the fertilizers, and when you sell the bananas, we will deduct, every pound of banana you sell, we'll deduct 3 cents or 5 cents from the cost of every pound to pay for that pesticide. So what happened in St. Vincent is that you will find farmers have large amount of pesticide that they don't need, and you have deducted their monies again, so they don't get back that money. So what they do, they go to the storehouse and they collect all of that, and you have them pile up in their little farmhouses. So they will sell them cheaply to people who are doing other crops. Now, pesticides are also designed for special use, right? They're not all designed for bananas or for, some of them are not good for, say, tomatoes or even save, you know, that kind of stuff. But the farmers sell them out cheap and people get them and they use them on any crop. And so the crop grows fast. Say, great. So if, like Michael Andrew said yesterday, if one crop works well, put 2. So we had an abuse of pesticide use during the banana period in the Windward Islands, so that now you're ready to go to organic, or now we are moving towards organic. You find your soils are already contaminated. It will take you a while before those soils become suitable for real organic. But the world is moving organic. The organic market in Canada is $1.5 billion last year.
My question is, are you aware or familiar with any agriculture producing societies that would have at the point of the consumer, a right to know? So you go to buy your grapes and it's listed with what pesticides may be used on it. What's the opinion on having something like that, or some policy or regulation that will allow the consumers? I know now we have labels that things are organic, but not everything that have an organic label may be grown organically, right? But what about saying, okay, malathion was used, or particular types of pesticides?
I do not know of any such company or organization in the Caribbean. The list of dirty dozen foods I presented to you actually came from such a company in the United States, a group that actually takes up, it's a civil society group that's actually doing this research and putting it out there for public knowledge, so the public has a right to know. But I do not know of any such entity within the Caribbean that does anything like that.